The reason I said this is one of the best teams ever assembled. You look at what they did last year. Um, they've upped their offensive rating this year, and still to the point that you were making about how good they are defensively, they're one of the best defensive teams in the league as well. So the fact you're top three in offensive and defensive rating is a little scary, and that's why you draw those comparisons to the 95, 96, 97 Bulls, and then also the 2015, 2016, 2017 Warriors. They're
Warriors.
in rare company.
They are in terms of both ends. I still think a lot of those Warriors teams made their defense great with their incredible offense, and how difficult they were to guard on the offensive end always improves your defensive numbers. But OKC right now, I mean, even a guy like Chet Holmgren, who was outstanding last night, Holmgren at 7'1" and lanky, he can defend on the perimeter. It's scary how good they are defensively, and how they swarm you when they need to, and you have very little chance. And LeBron played well last night. I mean, he started off well. He had a solid game, but they have nothing to help. I am looking forward to the next round and to see what a Minnesota or a San Antonio can do against Oklahoma City. But I think that as impressed as I've been with Minnesota so far in these playoffs, OKC is just a notch or a notch and a half below. The odds certainly reflect that. And if you want to watch, just a complete basketball team, the Oklahoma City Thunder right now are in the midst of a run that could be dynastic. It legitimately could be a dynastic run. If this is 2 in a row, I think a lot of people believe San Antonio's coming with Wemby, but until they get there, this team could win many more. They're still loaded with draft picks and young players and, potential, additions down the road. Really, really fun to watch them. This is not the series, though, because they're not going to really be tested by a depleted Lakers team. On the show today, we're going to consider 2 receivers, Stephon Diggs and Brandon Ayuk, because Stephon Diggs was found not guilty on the charges of strangulation and then assault and battery in a court yesterday. He is not going to jail. He's not going to be in trouble for the allegations against him. And he is now available, and I think there will be a lot of interest in Stephon Diggs. So start thinking about Stephon Diggs or Brandon Ayuk. If you could only choose one, but you had to choose one for the upcoming season, which one would you choose? I do want to talk a little bit more, though, about the games last night, because Anthony's into them like I am. The first game last night featured the Pistons and Cavs in Game 1 in their Eastern Conference final series. This is, for me, I have 2 rooting interests right now left in the NBA playoffs. I'm rooting for Minnesota to beat San Antonio because I just enjoy the way they play. And I'm rooting for James Harden to lose and to bow out in the postseason again. I find him to be one of the most joyless players in sports to watch. I've said this for years about him. I don't think he's a winner this time of year. Last night proved it again. 7 turnovers, none of them forced. James Harden is a regular season NBA player. At 36 years old, is that what he is? I think he's 36. Anthony, look that up. I think he's 36 years old. At 36 years old, James Harden has yet, with supposed great beard and hair and wisdom, has yet to figure out that there's a difference between the playoffs and the regular season. He plays way too casually for playoff success if he's your best player or your second best player. And on the Cleveland team, he and Donovan Mitchell as a backcourt were supposed to be the tandem that could take the Cavs to the NBA Finals. And look, they're very good. And they've got other players, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. They've got good players. I actually think they're well coached too. But James Harden had 7 turnovers last night and only made 6 shots. How about this? I saw this morning on ESPN. James Harden, for his career, has more games in which he's had more turnovers than made shots than any player in NBA history in the postseason. He's so casual with the basketball. He thinks it's regular season mode, and it's not. And Detroit's a good defensive team. Detroit struggles to score. When you turn the ball over yourself 7 times as a perimeter player, that's going to make it very easy to score for a team that struggles to score. How about fast break points last night? 15 and transition points, 31 for Detroit, a team that struggles to score. They had 20 turnovers in total last night, Cleveland did, 7 by James Harden. You can't win 4 out of 7 when one of your 2 best players turns the ball over more often than he makes shots. It's almost impossible to overcome. He's a terrible playoff basketball player. He's had moments. You can go find multiple 40, point plus games. And certainly in the postseason, you get some series where the matchups are good. Detroit's too good defensively. Cade Cunningham is much better defensively than anybody understands he is as a superstar player. And James Harden handed the ball to Cleveland on 5 of the 7 turnovers. He is just never going to have significant playoff success. When they traded for him, Cleveland did, and Harden was so excited to get out of LA because they had started to play better after their terrible start this year. But he was, excited to go to a contender in the East. Immediately when that trade happened, Anthony, I said, well, you can cross Cleveland off the list of potential championship teams. He's just not going to be that guy. Of course, he was off the bench as the 6th man for the OKC team that got to the finals and lost to the Heat with Westbrook and Durant. But no, you can't. He can't be one of your 2 best players and expect to win 4 out of 7, more than 2 times.
I mean, we've seen this happen to like players like where they are regular season players and then the postseason comes alive. I mean, look at Dak Prescott. He has a lot of regular season success, and Brian, like, he's over here shrugging his shoulders, but it's true. Like, he does not perform when the lights are the brightest. So I think to your point, though, James Harden failing to show up again and again and just routinely turn the ball over, that's not going to lead them to success.
Yeah, I think the difference between like a Prescott, I don't even know if Dak's the right comp for this, and I'm not pulling back because of Brian being a big Cowboys fan. I'm pulling back because I don't think Dak necessarily chokes, although you could make the case that he's done it a couple of times against Green Bay for sure a couple of years ago. He actually didn't play that poorly in a couple of those losses to the 49ers. With Harden, it's not a choke. It's a lack of recognition about the value of possessions in games that slow down and shorten up in the postseason. He plays them like they are regular season games. He plays them like you can be casual. I can have 5 turnovers, 6 turnovers in a game, and we can still win this game 128-124. That doesn't happen in the postseason. You've got to protect the basketball, and he doesn't. I'm looking at right now his turnovers so far in this postseason. All right, he had. Oh my God, I didn't
43.
even realize it was this many. He had in the Cleveland Toronto series in that 7-game series. He had 13, 17, 24, 30, 34, 36 turnovers in 7 games. He averaged just over 5 turnovers a game. And they were lucky to survive that series. They had a 2-0 lead in that series, and then they lost 3 out of the next 4. They won game 7. And by the way, in game 7, he wasn't great against Toronto. Didn't necessarily need to be. Last night, terrible. 7 turnovers in game 1. He's just, to me, like, they're just players in the history of sports where I don't get the fascination with them. And I'm not suggesting that James Harden isn't one of the all-time great regular season scorers, because he is. And the way he scores has always been incredibly crafty. He doesn't do it with athleticism. He does it with incredible ball handling skills, a quick release, space created offensively. But it's also been iso ball or two-man ball pretty much his entire career since moving on from OKC to Houston. And, he's won an MVP. He's been in the MVP race many times. But postseason-wise, no. Just never been the guy that you can count on when the basketball changes, which it does in the regular season. Tonight we get game 2s in 76ers, Knicks, Timberwolves, Spurs. Tonight will be a night that I will absolutely stay up. Well, it's not even late. The game tips at 9:30. We get a back-to-back doubleheader on ESPN tonight. 76ers, Knicks, game 1. I expect Philly to bounce back, Anthony. I think they were exhausted after the 7th and deciding game against Boston with Jason Tatum not playing because of knee soreness. Are you kidding me? And then I think they bounce back tonight. I don't know if they win the game, but tonight's going to be a much different game, and it'll be a game that Philly can win. And then tonight for the Spurs, if they don't win tonight, and I give Minnesota a chance. Is Anthony Edwards playing? How did he come out of that game? I haven't checked. Is he playing tonight?
Yeah, I mean, he's questionable, but I think he'll probably still end up playing.
If San Antonio doesn't win this game, the series is over. In fact, it may not even come back to San Antonio. So I expect San Antonio to win tonight, but I don't think Minnesota's happy with just, already getting the game and the guaranteed split. That's not the way they've played in this postseason. They have been absolute, bees on honey defensively and every night giving supreme effort. This team they've got something going on, and Chris Finch, the coach of Minnesota, complained after the game the other night that they won, that out of the 12 block shots by Victor Wembanyama, he said, guaranteed 4 of them were goaltending and maybe a 5th. I saw the list of the 12. There are 2 that are unquestionable goaltending misses. There's also one that absolutely should have been a foul. And then I don't know about the others. But still, you take 3 of his block shots and you turn them into either buckets or free throws. And that's huge. And so he was already stumping for the officials tonight to, make sure that they get Victor Wembanyama's blocked shots right. He had 12 the other night. Like, even if you take those 3 that I just mentioned away, he still had 9 in the game. But Minnesota kept coming. And this is a critical game because I think most people believe that if anybody's going to beat Oklahoma City, it's San Antonio. And I don't think the Spurs win this series without winning the game. That's not going out on a limb. They'd be down 0-2 going back to Minnesota for 2 games. But I think if they don't win tonight, this series is it's over. And it may not even come back to San Antonio. I give the T-Wolves a shot tonight. What I don't love is I don't love that the line's up to 9.5, 10. And there's, heavy public action right now on the dog. So I kind of like San Antonio tonight, but we'll see. I like watching Minnesota. 76ers Knicks, I think, will be a close game. And I still think this series is going 6 or 7, Philly and New York. What do you think about both games and both series tonight, Anthony?
I'll start with Wemby and the Spurs. I think what we're looking at for the Spurs anyway, and the fact that they lost game 1 is more so that inexperience that showed up. People forget that the Timberwolves have been to the Western Conference Finals the last couple of years. And they're
the experienced team.
Exactly. So I think they've been here. They've been in these moments. And I think when they were the 6th seed, that was a team I was saying would be the dark horse just because they have so much experience. They were hurt throughout the year. And now that they're getting healthy, they're finding their stride, I thought they definitely could make a run in the West. So I think that's what we're seeing on display. A lot of people want to talk about what the Spurs did in the regular season. The regular season is different from the postseason. And that's what you were talking about when you were talking about James Harden and his successes in the regular season. I think with the Knicks and 76ers, defensively, the Knicks have been really good the last 4 games. They've held their teams under 100 points. So I think as long as the Sixers offense is clicking, Paul George, Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, as long as those guys are, hitting perimeter shots, getting downhill, I think this will be a series. I expect Joel Embiid to also, have himself a big game. But I think this series goes 7 as well. I'm excited for
Okay.
this one.
Yeah, I mean, obviously tonight, tonight's going to really tell look, if Philly loses tonight and they're more competitive, I still think there's a chance that they can go home and win 2 and extend the series. I mean, it is interesting just right now, the moment that we are in with the Knicks having won, basically their last 4 games in massive blowout fashion, the last 2 by 39 and 51 respectively. So there is this sense that New York is absolutely on fire. But look, I think Philadelphia needs to go through Maxey more tonight than they did Embiid, because New York's bigs are different than Boston's bigs. When in Game 7 they just kept feeding Embiid, that's fine, and then Maxey kind of took over at the end. But the other night, Embiid's going to get worn out if they're trying to run the offense through Embiid on the post. I love Embiid. I think he's so gifted, but I also think that there is, a little bit of Anthony Davis in him. And I don't think you can ask him to do that against Karl Anthony Towns and Bridges, et cetera. So I think Maxey is as talented as anybody in the backcourt. I'd like to see Philadelphia make this a series. I would like to see them make this a series. We're going to do something here. We did it last week, and it worked out well. We're going to take calls on the NBA playoffs. And the question is this: have you seen enough to feel like there's no chance Oklahoma City doesn't win this title? That you've seen enough through their first 5 games of this postseason to say Oklahoma City is going back to back. I think they are. I actually do think it's a foregone conclusion. I think they're just way too deep. I mean, the fact that they've got one of their key players not playing right now, and they are still swarming people. This is an easy matchup. I'm not saying that the Lakers are going to be what they'll face in the Western Conference Finals against San Antonio or Minnesota. I just think they're too good. I think they're too well coached. I think they're way too versatile on both ends of the floor, especially on defense. It's hard to score against them. Is it a foregone conclusion in your mind that Oklahoma City is going back to back? 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. And we'll make it sort of open NBA playoff chat line here on the show. You can ask or make a comment about any of the other series as well. But answer that first question. Is Oklahoma City a foregone conclusion to win the title? They are minus 180 to win it all, and they've only played 5 games. You got to win 16 to win the title. They've got another 11 to go, and they are a massive favorite. Rarely do you see that this early in the postseason. 301-230-0980. It's the Kevin Sheehan Show on the Team 980 and the team980.com. 301-230-0980 if you want to weigh in on the NBA playoffs. It's NBA playoffs open line Wednesday. And the one question you've got to answer if you call at 301-230-0980 is, do you believe it's a foregone conclusion that Oklahoma City is going to win a second straight title? They are a minus 180 favorite to win the title at this point. That is uncharted territory for round two at the beginning of round two. The next favorite is San Antonio at plus 480. I mean, these are heavy odds in favor of Oklahoma City winning the title at this point. I do think that the next round would be an interesting round. I'm starting to think that Minnesota would push Oklahoma City more than any other team left in the field. But I do believe that Oklahoma City is going to win the championship for a second straight year. They're that good. They are, Anthony said they are making themselves into one of the best and one of the most versatile two-way teams we've ever seen. And he's not wrong. This is a dominant basketball team. Yes, I thought they were going to win easier than they did last year when they got to the finals against Indiana. But Tyrese Halliburton, before he got injured in Game 7, was incredible. And Indiana played exceptionally well. But SGA and OKC prevailed, and they won the title. I don't see how Oklahoma City doesn't win it. Minnesota would be an interesting, unafraid opponent. They are fearless. They are tough. They're gritty. All of those words about a team that just plays incredible defense and just doesn't really back down against anybody. That's Minnesota, but that's also Oklahoma City. I know everybody wants to Wemby against OKC in a best of 7. I understand that. But I don't think that they lose the title. 301-230-0980. Anthony, you agree with me, right?
Yeah, I definitely agree. Again, I think last year what we saw in the finals, we saw a team in the Indiana Pacers that could keep up and, I guess, move the ball effectively on the offensive side of the ball. They didn't have all those guys that, want to ISO and things of that nature. They had good ball movement. And I think that's probably the key to beating this Thunder team that just does a great job of swarming people and, being able to help the helper and things of that nature. So it's tough. Like, you got to be able to defend, and also you have to be able to score at a high rate when it comes to, battling the Thunder. So I don't know if there's a team that can do it. I think the Timberwolves would be an interesting team, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, I'm actually now to the point where I think Minnesota's got a really good chance to beat San Antonio. I think we're seeing kind of a welcome to the NBA playoffs moment for Wemby. There are going to be years for him down the roads, maybe starting next year, where San Antonio is going to be a legitimate title contender. He is a total unique player. He must have been on the ground the other night 6 times. They kept going at him despite the block shots, which is an incredible, performance by him defensively. But he was also worn out to the point where he was 0 for 8 from behind the arc, which was a major problem for them the other night. I don't know if he'll go 0 for 8 again, but those that just sort of did this default after the game the other night and said, well, Wemby is not going to go 0 for 8 again. You might be right that he's not going 0 for 8, but the reason that they didn't shoot the ball well from behind the arc was Minnesota's defense. The defense had something to do with the way they played. I enjoy watching Oklahoma City and Minnesota play very much so. And look, San Antonio is so talented, and it's not just, Victor Wembanyama. I mean, this is a young, loaded basketball team. You've got Castle, you've got Harper, you've got dudes that can really do it for them. And so I expect them to win tonight. They're now, I'm looking at this, Anthony, they're now a 10.5 point favorite in spots tonight. So And this is with lots of public action on Minnesota. I have a feeling Anthony Edwards might sit tonight after his performance the other night. We'll see. But if that's the case, then it's 1-1 going back to Minnesota, and Minnesota's got to figure out a way to win both games at home to really have a legit shot.
Do you think MJ will sit out a game for knee soreness?
No, but we're in a different era. But I think
Anthony
I hope
Edwards,
you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, his son, maybe his son won't maybe his son won't sit. I thought it was quite the contrast between him and Jason Tatum. I mean, Tatum with knee soreness in a game 7. Are you kidding me? If I were in Boston, we'd have been killing him the day after. You got to play that game. Anthony Edwards is supposed to be out another week and miss another 2, 3, 4 games with a deep bone bruise and with a hyperextended knee. And he comes back for game 1 off the bench, 25 minutes, 18 points, 11 of them in the fourth quarter. He's really a spectacular player. This from James on Twitter. Oklahoma City's got a chance to win the next 3 or 4 NBA titles before Wemby's legitimately ready to contend with the Spurs. It takes a while, especially for young bigs, to get it done. Yeah, that's not necessarily true. I mean, Kareem won it in Milwaukee as a pretty young player, as Lou Alcindor. Shaq won it as a fairly young player. Well, no. I mean, Shaq got to the finals as a young player in Orlando. Olajuwon had already been in the league at that point for 10 years, right when he won it. I mean, he was in the league for at least 10 years when they won it in 94, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to go back through it. It seems like bigs actually have a better chance of winning it when they're young players, to me. The players that have always taken time to win it, Magic won it, obviously, as a rookie. Bird won it in his second year. But for Mike, it took 7 years. For LeBron, it took a long time to finally get over the hump. All right, let's talk some Stephon Diggs and potentially his availability. We'll do that next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. By the way, this from Xavier. Xavier writes, the correct comp for your Harden conversation is in James Harden is Lamar Jackson. Lamar, great regular season player, not a great playoff performer at this point in his career. Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, for me, though, the point about Harden is just the absolute non-recognition that the game changes in the postseason. This guy that is a guy that plays so loosely and so casually with the basketball, and he's a great all-time scorer. I'm not saying there haven't been nights over the course of his now long career that haven't been mesmerizing to watch him, score, to watch him go for 55, 58, 60, on a regular season night. But the game is completely different in the postseason. And he's got more games in which he's had more turnovers than made shots than any player in NBA playoff history. You can't have 7 turnovers in a game like last night and expect and turn the ball over at the rate that he's been turning the ball over and does typically in the postseason because he plays like it's a regular season game as if there's been no change. He's 36 years old. He should have figured it out by now. By the way, somebody sent me a link to what he said after the game. He took all the blame. He said, how many turnovers did I have? 7. He's like, there's your game. He said it led to transition points, 31 transition points. For a team that can't score, Detroit, they struggle to score. You're just handing them easy opportunities. I'm just not and never have been a James Harden fan. It's fun to watch him at times, and then most of the times, though, as I've said, the description for me is joyless. There's just no joy that his game brings me, especially this time of year. It's painful to watch the ISO, the dribbling the air out of the ball, and then it end with just a handing the ball to the other team more times than he made shots last night. 7 turnovers, 6 made shots. You can't win 4 out of 7 4 times playing that way. When he's your best player or second best player, I would say he's certainly, I don't even think he's their second best player. Donovan Mitchell's their best player. But at this time of the year, he's supposed to be one of your top 2 players. And by the way, he's going to have a game here this week or the weekend or early next week where he goes for 39 or 37 and makes, 5 out of 10 from behind the arc, and they win the game. But I'm talking about over a best of 7. You can't treat the basketball the way he does and be the first or second option your team has and then have your team win 4 out of 7 4 times. All right, Stefon Diggs. A jury found Stefon Diggs yesterday not guilty in Boston, a jury in Boston, of assaulting his private chef in a pay dispute. He pled not guilty back in February to felony strangulation and a misdemeanor assault and battery charge stemming from the alleged dispute. The trial lasted just 2 days. The acquittal clears a path for Diggs' return to the field, although he could still face some discipline from the NFL. Brian McCarthy, the NFL spokesperson, said, we've been monitoring all developments in the matter, which remains under review of the personal conduct policy. So we shall see. The case centered, by the way, on a December 2nd encounter in Diggs' home in Massachusetts. Remember, he played with the Patriots this year, where Jamila Adams, a former live-in personal chef known as Mila, testified that he slapped and choked her during an argument. Diggs' attorney said the alleged assault never happened and questioned Adams' credibility and whether the dispute was about money, relationship tensions, including a disagreement over a planned trip to Miami, or an actual alleged assault. Clearly, the jury did not think it was an alleged assault. I did see plenty of videos from her testimony on Monday, and she was a disastrous witness. It seemed almost, like a foregone conclusion on Monday that Diggs was going to be found not guilty. So we're not getting into the case. We're not even getting into Diggs's, personal issues over the course of his career. We're getting into the fact now that he is an available football player. By the way, you could have signed him before this if you thought that it was going to go this way. He's an available football player. Stefon Diggs is. And Stephon Diggs had a pretty good year last year, as a player who's now 33 years old, 32 years old. Last year in New England, his one season in New England, 85 receptions, 1,013 yards, 4 touchdowns, in an offense that was, had rebounded from the year before. Drake May really came on, had a superb year. Now, that defense got better and better and ended up leading them for sure in the postseason, where the offense sort of fell apart. Stephon Diggs played all 17 games after being injured seriously for the first time in his career in Houston the year before. I am a Stephon Diggs fan from this standpoint. I think he's as good a competitor as the game has. He is there on game day, and yes, he is probably a short dose guy, a pain in the backside for coaches, for teammates, but short dose, one season, a big season where there's a team with a need for a number 2 receiver, for a guy that loves to win, helps you win on Sundays. You're not making a commitment to beyond 2026. Call me interested in Stephon Diggs. On the other hand is Brandon Ayuk. We've gone through the Ayuk situation ad nauseum, literally to the point where several of you have said, stop talking about Brandon Ayuk. It's starting to feel like the Terry McLaurin conversation from last summer. But Brandon Ayuk is a different conversation than Terry McLaurin was last year, because Brandon Ayuk's not on the team. Terry McLaurin was on the team and was always going to be on the team because he was under contract and he was going to play. Even though it got framed during the summer, this like choice between pay him so he plays or don't pay him and he won't play. No, he was always going to play. He was under contract. The issue was whether or not he was going to play with a contract extension or whether he was going to play on the final year of his contract. Brandon Ayuk is younger. Brandon Ayuk, the last time we saw him play a full season, was a top 10 receiver easily in the NFL. But we now know the last year and a half, and it's not pretty. It's really the last 2 years, starting with the contract negotiation in the lead up to the 2024 season. He did not handle it maturely. There were a lot of, clear unprofessional moments. He's had several of those since. Then he gets injured early in 2024, a really difficult knee injury, takes a lot of rehab, and part of the rehab, because he went and had the surgery done outside the organization and had the rehab done outside the organization, meant per his contract that all he had to do was report periodically 1 to 2 times a month is what's been reported, to let San Francisco's team doctors examine the process, the rehab, and how it was going. But he went AWOL. He stopped showing up to the facility, and they voided between $30 and $40 million of guaranteed money on his contract. Probably one of the craziest things we've seen in the league, because as many people have said, it's really not something we've seen before, because typically when teams try to void guaranteed dollars from contracts, they usually get stopped. They get stopped by attorneys. They get stopped by the NFL Players Association. And no one has fought back for the money that got voided. No one has. He hasn't. His agent hasn't. Attorneys representing him haven't. And the NFL Players Association hasn't either. That is very telling. It may change. Maybe they're just waiting to see when he comes back, they're going to go back after that money. Maybe he thinks they're going back after that money. But to leave $30 to $40 million basically back with the team and out of your bank account because you won't show up to their facility 1 to 2 times a month is poor judgment at best, and really mental instability at worst. So here are the 2 choices. You've got to pick one, right? This is one in which the answer can't be neither. I'll take the group that I have. And let me just mention, I've said this a few times. If they enter this upcoming season with the current group of receivers that they have, I'll be disappointed, because I would have preferred another playmaker, specifically another wide receiver, to complement Terry, to give him a true number two? Is it possible a true number two exists on the roster right now in the form of, Treylon Burks? Probably not. Luke McCaffrey? Probably not. Antonio Williams? As a true number two, as a rookie, I'm going to say probably not. But maybe they got something that they believe is going to work. Maybe Diami, maybe Burks. If they went into the season with the group that they have, it's not like they aren't going to be capable offensively. The most critical player to their offense and to their team is Jaden Daniels. And we saw what happened in 2024 with essentially a similar group, in terms of the available playmakers. It was not, a dynamic playmaking unit. In fact, you could argue that in the backfield alone, they don't have the home run threat, or they didn't in 2024, that maybe Krosky Merritt is. I mean, Eckler was really good in 2024 when he was on the field, and I thought they were a much better team offensively when he was on the field versus when he wasn't. But if they went into 2026 with this group, it would be capable of playing well and at a high level. Would it be the top 3, top 4, top 5 offense that it was in 2024? I don't know, but it'd be a top 10 offense if the quarterback plays all 17. I believe that. And then it just comes down to team success relying on the defense to be much improved. But I would love another bona fide playmaker. And so the choice, and we'll open up phone lines at 301-230-0980. We may have had an issue with our phone lines earlier. We'll see if they work now. 301-230-0980. Phone lines are open. You can only choose one, but you have to choose one. If I told you that either Diggs or Ayuk was on the roster for week 1 in 2026 on a 1-year deal, all right, it's a 1-year, very inexpensive relative to, what Diggs would have been worth, a couple of years ago. And certainly the Ayuk deal has to be a 1-year prove-it deal. That's a given with his background. But Diggs is a 1-year deal. All right. These are not long-term commitments. You got to pick one. Which one are you choosing? 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. I'm going to give you my choice when we come back. You can factor into, the idea that Ayuk, if he's successful at 28 years old, you've got your either number 1 or number 2 receiver moving forward, depending on Terry's status in 2027. Whereas with Diggs at his age, this is really kind of a 1-year deal. Not just with his age, but with his, lack of being a guy that, people like to have around for more than a season. From what I've been told about Stephon Diggs, there's, everybody believes in him as a competitor. Everybody believes in him as a team competitive guy, but just a bit much to deal with for more than a season or two, personality-wise. 301-230-0980. I'll give you my answer when we come back. Anthony will give you his answer when we come back. You've got to choose one. Diggs or Ayuk on a 1-year deal for 2026. Who are you choosing? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app.
Madam Forelady, members of the jury, hearken to your verdict as the court has recorded it. Upon your oath, you say that the defendant is not guilty of the count of strangulation or suffocation and not guilty of the count of assault and battery. So say you, Madam Forelady?
Yes.
So say all members of the jury.
Yes.
Stefon Diggs found not guilty on both counts yesterday. He is now available, and I would imagine that he will get signed. It's possible that the NFL could, from a personal conduct policy, do something in terms of the form of a suspension. We'll see. That would certainly factor into it. But let's just assume right now, for the purposes of this conversation, that you have to choose between Stefon Diggs or Brandon Ayuk for 2026. That one of those two is going to be suiting up for our team in 2026 on a one-year deal. All right. There's no long-term commitment. It's a one-year deal. Let's also assume that Brandon Ayuk comes with some level of risk, but that if they went out and signed him, you'd have to, I think, deduct that Adam Peters and even Jaden Daniels and others have a good sense that he is healthy physically and mentally. So which would you choose? I'm really interested in the idea of Diggs being a part of the team with Terry on one side, Diggs on the other, Diggs being used in so many different ways, along with, the rookie Antonio Williams and anything else that sort of emerges from the rest of the group. I just think Diggs helps teams win. I think that he is certainly a longer-term issue for a locker room and a culture. I'm not suggesting that that would not be a risk, but I'm talking about one season. I'm talking about this upcoming season. And on game day and even in practice, no one's ever questioned his work ethic or his game day preparation or his game day competitiveness. But I'd take Ayuk. And I'd take Ayuk because, quite honestly, Ayuk at his best in 2023 was a better receiver than Stefon Diggs. I mean, Diggs was very good in 23, and Diggs was pretty good last year. But Diggs is older and isn't as good as what I think the upside of Ayuk is. Now, again, I'm assuming that if they signed Ayuk, he's not crazy and he's physically fit and motivated to play at a high level and happy to be here. Apparently, this is where he wants to be. Because Brandon Ayuk in 2023, and I understand it's 2026, I understand there's a lot of water under that bridge in the last 3 years. But his potential ceiling is higher not only in the short term, but definitely in the long term. So my choice would be Brandon Ayuk. But if Ayuk is nuts and they don't want any part of him, I would definitely consider Stefon Diggs. Ayuk's my choice. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. You have to choose one, Diggs or Ayuk. One of those two is going to be on the roster on a short-term, one-year deal. Tell me which of the two you'd prefer to have. Anthony, go ahead.
I'm going with Brandon Ayuk as well. However, I do think it's more likely that Stefon Diggs will be the guy that's on our roster in 2026.
More likely.
Yeah. I think he's more like, just because, again, we're at the mercy of the San Francisco 49ers, and they're not going to do us any favors in releasing Brandon Ayuk early. So if I'm the Commanders, I'm probably going to end up leaning Stefon Diggs because we'll be able to bring him in OTAs, mini camp, training camp. We don't know when we're going to get Brandon Ayuk. I do love the higher upside of having an Ayuk here, but I just think what's more likely, Stefon Diggs being here.
I mean, that is something to consider because the Ayuk possibility. Now you're weighing in on a separate question, which is more likely.
Okay.
And you think that Diggs is more likely, even though you'd prefer Ayuk. I think it's interesting because I actually still think Ayuk is more likely because I wonder whether or not they would actually take a chance on Diggs at 33 years old, given, what he can be, which is a handful in a locker room that they've perfected from their standpoint in terms of what they've looked for culturally. Now, maybe that's the reason they won't add Ayuk either. But I still think Ayuk is more likely because I think they know the player. But to your point, if they have to wait until the end of the summer, like after camp is over, after preseason's over, and that's when San Francisco finally gets rid of him, they may not want to wait. They may have a cutoff date in mind for Ayuk. And maybe if we get to, I mean, the thing here is now Diggs becomes more in play for a lot of teams, and his preference might not be Washington, even though this is his hometown. Whereas with Brandon Ayuk, even if there is competition, this appears to be, we think, his preference. Yeah, which is more likely, I'm not asking, but it's an interesting thing to consider. But the question is, if I told you today one of those two is going to be on the roster, who would you prefer it to be? 301-230-0980. For me, it's Ayuk. For Anthony, it's Ayuk. Let's go to Ross in Tampa. Ross, go ahead.
Hey, yo, Kevin, what's good in the hood?
What's up?
What I got? Real quick. Well, it's crazy, man. 2024, they both tore their ACLs 3 weeks apart. Diggs tore his ACL on a non-contact in week 8. Brandon Ayuk on contact week 5. Diggs comes back and he actually performs very well, goes to the Super Bowl. And, oh, yeah, that girl, she was a hot mess on the stand. Once she opened her mouth, she lost all credibility. So that's enough on itself to want to bring in Diggs. But I actually went to college with a receiver who shared the locker room with Brandon Ayuk and played for, was signed by John Lynch. Do you remember Willie Snead IV?
Yeah, played with the Saints, yeah.
Yeah, him. He had told me, he wasn't going to tell me too much about Ayuk, but he basically told me what they call John Lynch when he feels some type of way. They call him 47 Red. And I kind of remember the incident with the linebacker with the 49ers where, like, he didn't want to go back in the game because he had got replaced by Dre Greenlaw. They didn't cut him. They just let him sit there. So I'm thinking it's a better option.
The reference 47 Red, just the Lynch number, jersey number.
Yeah, and I guess when he's angry, his face is red. Yeah, 47 Red.
I actually thought that you were making a reference perhaps to our current president, and I wanted to just make sure that those that thought maybe that's what you were doing, that it was about John Lynch's jersey number. But go ahead.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So basically, long story short, if we just gonna wait for Brandon Ayuk, we gonna see them beautiful uniforms actually being put to use on the field while he's still on the books with the 49ers. I would rather just get the guy who's available. It's not like you're asking us who we want to sign to a long-term contract. We're talking 1 year.
It's 1 year.
And I say Jaden Daniels is going to vibe with Diggs better than any other receiver he's played with. I know the age is a factor, but I would just go at this point because I don't even know if Brandon Ayuk even wants to play. You know, his upside is there. Shoot, my upside would be I'm a great radio host. I'm a mail carrier. You know what I'm saying? Upside is all over the place. So that's where I'm at. I'm with Diggs. And I'll leave you with this, Kevin. I wish you partial luck this Sunday in the lottery. Like I told Denton, man, I'm hoping them ping pongs bounce in favor of Indiana because we're gonna need some more ammo when we come back fully healthy next season.
Thanks, Russ, for the call, as always. 1 in for Stefan Diggs. By the way, we're putting up our Waldorf Honda Twitter poll of the day. You can vote on it by going to the Team 980 and voting on it. And that Waldorf poll of the day is driven by Waldorf Honda. It all starts with a click, waldorfhonda.com. Aveen, go ahead. You have to pick one. One of these two ends up on the team. 1 year deal, Diggs or Ayuk. Who are you picking?
Hey, Kevin. So I'm going Diggs just because he's such a reliable, sure thing. And I'm thinking short term, if I want Jaden Daniels to have a big year next year, if I want to make the playoffs next year, the division feels winnable, you go with Stefan Diggs. Other than his ACL injury in 2024, he's reliably been somebody who starts every game and gets you 1,000 yards. He's last season he had 85 catches on 102 targets. He catches everything. He's fearless over the middle. He knows how to get open. Like there's little risk associated with him, and he would just fit in so well with our ecosystem and Jaden Daniels. There's none of the Ayuk risk that comes with it. And, you just don't know when you're going to get Ayuk, how long it's going to take for him to get into football shape, if he's as much of a factor this year. The only reason to me you take Ayuk is because of the long-term stuff. And, Diggs is pretty much 32. This is his 32 season because he turns 33 at the end of November. So I just view it as like, if you're trying to win now, if you really want next year to be a big year, which I think it would be if we got Diggs for Jaden Daniels, then I'm just going with Diggs just because he's such a sure thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a sure thing, to Diggs. The issue is, what is that sure thing? It's not what it was 2 or 3 years ago. He was a very good receiver last year. They actually had incredible rates as an offensive unit. Their wide receivers did during the regular season. They faced much tougher competition, obviously, in the postseason with the defensive teams that they faced. The Chargers and the Texans, and then the Broncos and the Seahawks. But during the year, their receivers as a group per DVOA had the biggest separation in terms of, easy windows to throw in of any team in the league. And Diggs has always been a separator. I don't know where he ranked among the receivers in that category, but I would imagine it was close to the top. Thanks, Savine. Appreciate it. Yeah, go ahead. What did you want to say? All right. JYD, Diggs or Ayuk? You got to pick one.
Well, Kevin, I'm a greedy guy, but I would like to have both. But since you said I can only have one, give me Diggs. And I say that simply because Diggs will bring, people say he's a handful, but hey, this guy on Sunday, he's a dog.
He is that on Sunday. There is that's the part of Diggs for a season that feels like it's an important season. I think for all of us, not just for the people out there. We got to see something resembling what we saw in 2024. And in his third season, in Jaden's third season, he kind of deserves a bit more in terms of weapons. And Diggs, I think, for one season would be a weapon, and he is an absolute dog on game days. And that's what I love about him.
He also brings experience, a lot of experience.
Sure, big game experience too. Yeah,
and he's just right. He's just coming off of a Super Bowl, whatever. And and you need that. I think he can, maybe help some of these other guys, to know. Which I know Terry knows how to prepare, but you always can learn more. And I think, and like I said, we need that type of attitude in the locker room or whatever. And I feel like this: if you can't control your own locker room or whatever, then maybe you don't need to be the coach. Maybe you don't need to be the general manager.
Right. Last year, I'm looking back. JYD, thanks for the call always. I'm looking back last year just to see the stories that were written about the Patriots contemplating Diggs, and then when they did sign Diggs. And it's the same conversation we're having right now. There was hesitance about signing Diggs, but they wanted to give Drake May in his first full year of starting as many weapons as possible, and really they didn't have a true number one on that roster. Washington does. They had Demario Douglas. They had obviously Hunter Henry as a tight end. They had Mac Hollins, who actually played pretty well and had a couple of clutch catches in the postseason. They had Butte as a receiver. They didn't have like a true, high level one. So they were in a slightly different situation. And Diggs became their number one, and he was their leading pass catcher last year, had 85 receptions. Nobody else had more than 60, and that was Hunter Henry. So he got targeted more by Drake May than anybody else. And look, I mean, Diggs still got at 31 last year for the majority of the season, still got tremendous separation, was still pretty good after the catch. Now, his route running was a bit more shallow last year than it was during the earlier years of his career. It makes sense. But he was big for them last year. He was big for that young quarterback last year. And again, we're only talking about 1 year. For me, though, it would be Ayuk. Because if we're talking about the idea that they are getting a guy that's physically and mentally healthy, Ayuk's best in 2023 was much better than Diggs's best in 2025. Doesn't mean you're going to get that from Ayuk, but there's also a chance with Ayuk of a future beyond 1 year. Let's go to Chris in Bowie. Chris, you got to pick one, Diggs or Ayuk for our team in 2026. Who is it?
What's going on, Kevin? That's a tough question, but it's kind of a little easier to answer because as good as Ayuk is, and as great as Diggs is, I think that all the controversy and the AWOL from Ayuk in San Francisco, it's just, if you're going to bring something like that to Washington, that's something you got to stay away from. That's why I would take Diggs over Ayuk. And on top of that, what you've already said and what a couple other callers already said was he's a straight monster on the field. Like you said, he played 17 games last year. Now he's got his off the field issues too that he just got acquitted for, or not guilty for. Was it this morning or yesterday? But it's clearly Stephon Diggs. He was like that at Good Counsel. He was like that at UMD. He was like that in Minnesota with that game-winning touchdown catch. He was like that in New England. So, I mean, we want to see the same thing. Brandon Ayuk, even though he was great in 22 and 23, and he knows Jaden, I'd rather put Stephon Diggs around Jaden Daniels than a person that Jaden knows, like Ayuk, and then have Ayuk do a replay of what he just did in San Francisco with John Lynch and throwing away $27 million or how many ever tens of millions of dollars it was. It's clearly Stephon Diggs. And like, yeah, Stephon, like other players.
I just don't think that for the purposes of this conversation, if they were to add Ayuk, you have to assume that they believe they're getting something resembling the last time he played before his injury, and that there's a chance that he could become, their number one in the future. That's why I think that if one or the other ended up on the roster, I think the immediate contribution level would be almost a wash, but Ayuk's potential for beyond 2026 would probably be, much greater. It would be much greater.
Yeah.
But if you told me that they can't get Ayuk or they don't want Ayuk, I'd want Diggs. I am on board with thinking that Stephon Diggs on this roster would be a major contributor and a major difference maker in 2026. And right. Especially given that he'd actually have a receiver opposite of him that he hasn't had in a few years.
And Terry.
He didn't have it really in Buffalo. He didn't have it in New England. He really didn't have it in Minnesota. Because Justin Jefferson was added after he left Minnesota. I mean, he had Thielen. Thielen was a good number two. I'm not saying that Adam Thielen back then wasn't a good number two, but Stephon Diggs has always been a number one and hasn't always had, the benefit of another, receiver that draws attention. So I think he'd be a great ad. If you force me to choose, which is what I'm making you guys do, I'd take Ayuk because I think there's a better chance at an upside long term. Thanks, Chris, as always. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I see all of you on hold. You've got to pick one or the other, Brandon Ayuk or Stephon Diggs, to be on this roster in 2026. The added info for this question is you're just adding them initially on a 1-year deal. That's it. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. I do want to tell you that May's weather has been beautiful. It really has been. And it'll remain nice, really, for the better part of the month. But the hot summer days are going to be here soon. Don't wait until the heat hits to try and avoid high energy bills if you've got older windows. Upgrade your home's windows this month during Window Nation's Buy 4, Get 4 free sale. Imagine replacing all your windows with new energy-efficient windows and getting half of them for free. Yeah, buy 4, get 4 free. That means you're not paying for half of them. You're paying half price. Plus, you can get them with no money down, no monthly payments, and no interest charged for 2 years. If you've got older windows, you're probably paying higher air conditioning bills in the summer, higher heating bills in the winter. Don't wait to put an end to your window problems. Get the new windows in before the summer heat arrives. It all starts with an in-home estimate, free of charge, 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Honestly, it's worth the estimate. They'll come out and at the very least, you'll find out which windows in your home need to be replaced, and then you make the call. No obligation, no pressure. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
Here's Purdy with a lot of time. Steps into one. Launching deep. Going for Brandon Ayuk. It is. Oh, he caught it off the ricochet. Penalty. Is he in? He's down to the 5.
Ayuk or Diggs? If I told you one of them was added to this roster, what's your preference? Who's your preference, Diggs or Ayuk? I mentioned a stat earlier that Earl asked me to clarify. So DVOA does team efficiency and coverage stats on pass catching, and they have a DVOA stat called an open percentage. It's the percent of snaps where the receiver was open, and then they also have a wide open rate, the percentage of snaps where the receiver was wide open. New England's receiver group last year, led by Stephon Diggs, was 5th in the league in open percentage, 2nd in the league in wide open rates. So they were separating, at a larger rate in that wide open category more than any other team, with the exception of Minnesota, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, et cetera, and their receivers. So Diggs, now I'm looking for the actual player separation rates, and for whatever reason, I cannot find them in DVOA. But the team New England, one of the reasons they had as much success as they did during the regular season, and Drake May was a legitimate MVP candidate, is because they had receivers that were getting open at a wide open rate at the second highest level in the NFL. He had to make the throws. Don't get me wrong, and I thought he played very well. But he had receivers, whether it was Diggs or Douglas or even Hunter Henry or Boutte, et cetera, that were getting separation and getting open. Now, could that have been about the offensive coordinator? Certainly it could have been. Could have been Josh McDaniels and his scheme. So you can only pick one. One of them's going to end up on the team, and one of them's going to end up on the team on a 1-year deal. That's it. Which of the two would you prefer? I say Ayuk, but I'd love Diggs too. Don't get me wrong. Like, I want to see one of these two on the team. I think I'd choose Ayuk, though. And I'd choose Ayuk because Ayuk at his best a few years ago was better than Diggs' best last year, and Diggs was good last year. He was. Bay has been on hold. Bay, go ahead.
Hey, good afternoon, Cam. How you doing today?
I'm good, Bay. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Hey, Cam, there's a reason why I would take Diggs. Number one, they say the best ability is the availability. Yeah. Brandon Ayuk have missed 2 full years of football. And judging from them pictures that we've seen, he's fat and out of shape, and he's not in football shape. And if you get him now, you probably won't get to play him until October. Remember last year, Terry had a whole offseason on. We didn't really get him back until probably like the middle of the season. I mean, as far as like game-wise.
Right.
This guy been gone for 2 years, and mentally we don't know where he at. So I would rather take Diggs, although I don't want him. I would take him over him, but you already know who I would rather trade for, and with Brian Thomas Jr. Thank you, sir. Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Bay. Appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, look, I know some of you would prefer neither. That's not the question, though. The question is, if I told you one of the two was on the team for opening day, which of the two would you prefer it be? And that's a good argument by Bay, is the availability and when Brandon Ayuk will be ramped up to playing, if he ever gets to the Brandon Ayuk level of 2023. Would it be right from the jump, or would you have to wait several weeks into the season? I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that at 28 years old, if he eventually ramped up to a very high level, you could potentially have him here for the next 2, 3, 4 years. Whereas with Diggs, that's not likely at his age. The Waldorf Honda poll, Twitter poll, is up. You can go vote on it by going to @Team980. I retweeted it as well from @Kevin Sheehan DC. And so far, few votes in, very few, but Diggs has 2/3 of the vote. And that's pretty much what we've gotten here, even more than 2/3 of the vote on the phone lines. Seems like the majority of you, and maybe a big majority of you, would prefer Diggs. Let's go to our guy, Mark in Largo. Mark, go ahead.
Hey, it's Diggs all day. And here's the reason why. Look, Stephon Diggs is a Hall of Famer.
closer to being a Hall of Famer than Brandon Ayuk. Diggs has excelled in multiple systems, Kevin. Something you don't talk about. Ayuk has only had one system. I know, and that's not being fair. But you're looking for Ayuk to be that dude from 23 to 25. And look, you remember Ali, man. You watch all his old fights, man. When Ali couldn't miss those prime years, he wasn't that same dude when he came back at 28. That's what I think you're going to get with Brandon Ayuk. Because his prime years were 2 years ago and 3 years ago, whereas now, you get him at 28, then you're going to want to give him a long-term deal. He's going in the Terry category, man. I mean, he really is. I mean, I would stick with Diggs for this season and then go after Brian Thomas Jr. Next season. Go all in for him next season. But I would go for Diggs this year because you just need a stopgap for this season.
Can I go back to what you first said? Stephon Diggs is a future Hall of Famer. I think that's what I said. Am I misquoting you?
He's closer to being a Hall of Famer.
He's closer to being. Well,
Closer.
Of course he is. He's played a lot longer. But I guess my follow-up question to that would be, do you think Stephon Diggs is going to end up in the Hall of Fame?
Probably not. Probably not. I doubt it. But Kevin, everywhere he's gone, he's excelled in different systems.
You're right. You're right about that. Everywhere he's gone, he's performed. He has performed. Yeah. Stephon Diggs, by the way, he's got a case. He's got at least an outside case, with another year or two. Obviously, had he had a big game in the Super Bowl, that would have helped.
Yeah.
But they got absolutely throttled. Diggs is. I'm just looking up to see where he is at this point. So
I mean, think about this. Kevin. If Stephon Diggs came here for this season and Washington goes to the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl in SoFi, he'll go out in retirement, just like Joe Lavender did in 1983. When Joe Lavender won that Super Bowl in '83 with the Redskins, it was.
I love the comps you come up with. It's a good comp, but Joe Lavender, I don't think had even, and he was a good corner, but I don't think he had the corner career that Stephon Diggs had.
No, hell no.
By the way, Stephon Diggs, it will be an interesting conversation when he's done. Right now, the answer would be no. But if he put together, say, another 2 years of big-time numbers, he might have a case numbers-wise. He might.
Let me ask you this, Kevin. What if he does well this year and he does well in the Super Bowl and they win the Super Bowl playing here? You don't think
I said that, like, if he had a big game last year with New England in the Super Bowl, it's not going to matter if he does it here versus anywhere else. Hall of Fame consideration doesn't include your hometown team in terms of the consideration. But I do look. He's not a Hall of Famer as of now.
No,
could he have another 2, 3, 4 years of high productivity? Oh man.
Yeah. Well.
All right.
Yeah.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, but
I'm gonna roll. Good call, Billy and Chantilly. Ayuk or Diggs?
Kevin, good morning. Last year around this time, I proposed that we do whatever it takes to get Terry in camp ASAP. Adam's ego got in the way of that. It basically ruined the season last year. It basically ruined the season last year. The reason you signed Terry is because he's one of the premier receivers from an attitude, culture, in addition to the performance on the field. That's why you brought in Terry last year at the beginning of training camp, not the end of training camp like the knuckleheads did.
Yeah, I just completely disagree with that premise. I think anybody that had any knowledge of what was going on, I've said it 1,000 times, it was at best case for Terry, they were equally culpable in that negotiation. The agent and Terry had a completely delusional idea of what his worth was, and I'm glad the team didn't give him that just to get him into camp early. That would have been a big mistake. But anyway, your point is Diggs is available to get in quickly, so you're choosing Diggs or not? Where is this leading to?
You are talking about two invisible men in the playoffs. Ayuk and Diggs are the invisible men. Brandon, 10 career playoff games, 1 touchdown. Diggs, 18 playoff games, 3 touchdowns. Terry, 4 playoff games, 3 touchdowns. That's called a big-time player. Diggs and Ayuk are both culture killers. They're terrible for the team. They ruin teams. And the idea that you would bring in either of them is disgraceful. I'll bring in Ayuk.
How many touchdowns did you say Diggs had in the postseason? 3? Is that what you said?
Yeah, right.
It's 5. Just making it factual. He's played in 18 playoff games. He's got 83 receptions for over 1,000 yards, and he's got 5 touchdown catches in his playoff games.
18 playoff games. The invisible men. So Brian.
Well, that's not invisible. He's played. That's not invisible. Okay, with Buffalo in 2020 in 3 playoff games, he had 20 catches for 311 yards. So he averaged over 100 yards per game in the 2020 postseason. In the postseason in 2022 with Buffalo, he had 2 games, 150 yards. Touchdown catches can be a little bit overrated in terms of stats. Look at targets, look at receptions, look at yards, look at first down catches. He has not been a disaster in the postseason. Let me pull up Brandon Ayuk, because now that you got one player's numbers wrong, I don't know if I can trust you on Ayuk's numbers. What did you say Ayuk's playoff numbers were?
10 games, 1 touchdown.
9 games, 1 touchdown. But also 9 games and 400 yards in receptions.
That's the invisible
but yes,
man.
they do not match his regular season numbers. That's correct.
Yeah. So we'd agree that those are 2 invisible men in the playoffs.
No,
we'd agree with that,
I do not agree with that. Stephon Diggs' numbers do not make him invisible in the postseason. That's incorrect.
So in 18 games, 5
and let me just also say that, an average of 44 yards in reception yards in 9 playoff games isn't great and doesn't match his regular season numbers, obviously, but it's also not invisible. Invisible is when you go through 3 playoff games and you have 2 catches. He's had 9 catches twice in 3 playoff games. I'm not saying that it's great. I'm just saying that it's not invisible. Your hyperbole is on display per usual.
Yeah, the relativity to the invisible is it's relative to his jumping up and down, screaming on the sidelines, running around like a baby, yelling at the coaches, yelling at the quarterbacks, ruining your culture. Your culture. That's what Diggs does. That's what Ayuk does. What Terry McLaurin does is add to your culture. And that's why you needed to bring him in last year.
Nobody's comparing either one of these 2 guys to Terry McLaurin from a culture standpoint. Who's doing that?
You've said for the last 2 weeks how much you like Ayuk better than Terry McLaurin.
I said as a ceiling player at this point, Brandon Ayuk, if you got something resembling Ayuk in 2023 and he's 28 years old and he's got a resurrection to his career, you've got a true number 1 moving forward. Yes, I liked Ayuk more than I liked Terry in 2023. I did. You know why? Because he was better than Terry in 2023.
I have one question for you on Ayuk.
We're not talking about personality or culture fit. Obviously, Terry is all-time culture fit for this organization.
Well, I want to win Super Bowls, and so do you. My one question to you is, and I'll leave. I know you got a lot of calls. How is Ayuk going to catch a football next year when he's running around in a straitjacket?
Well, the presumption is, Billy, that if they were to bring him into the building, that he's not checking into the building after leaving a hospital's 5th floor with padded, in a padded room, with no shoelaces. We're not talking about that. The idea is if you added him, he passed the test physically, mentally. They're not going to add this guy if he's walking into the building in a straitjacket. Athen in Annapolis, you get a choice of either Ayuk or Diggs on a one-year deal, and they're both healthy, both mentally and physically, for this one-year deal. Which of the two would you choose?
Well, Father Kevin Sheehan, the ordained minister of the Church of Lavero.
Yeah.
my take
I,
on
I am an ordained minister. That is true. I had to do that because I had to officiate a wedding on Saturday night. Yes, that's true.
Well,
but it was temporary, Athen. It was temporary. I don't think I have that ordained minister temporary or that it's long lasting. I think it was for literally like 30 minutes, and that was it.
Well, if I ever take the plunge, we're going to go to the crap stable, and you can ordain, be the certifier for me at the casino.
Roll some numbers. Let's do it.
Exactly. I would have to go Ayuk just because this is his last chance to get a contract. If it would just be for a year, he's lost millions, and all the people in his inner circle that are close to him that can get through to him have to be saying to him, "Dude, do you see what you did in San Francisco and how badly you screwed this up? You're still young. You still have ability. You could still make money in this league." That's why I would want Ayuk, because he's younger, he's better, and he's got more to prove. Not to say Diggs isn't a great competitor, but Ayuk's just got more to prove, and this is his last chance to get a contract.
There's so we don't know anything, obviously, other than what we all read. We don't even know how Adam Peters and even Jaden Daniels feel. For all we know, they're like, no chance. Last time I talked to him, sounded completely out of it. Or I haven't talked to him in 3 months. He won't return our calls, whatever it is. And I don't think they are allowed to call him anyway, because that would be tampering. But the point is, we don't know anything. And what you just described is one of those possibilities that he's actually healthy, and it was just a terrible relationship, and he didn't handle it well on his end, and maybe they didn't handle it well on their end, and he's got something to prove. And you're getting him into the right situation for him. So, yeah, those things are in play. All right. Sabah's on hold. Wow. Haven't heard from her in a while. Paulie, Clinton, Williams, Sean, everybody on hold, stay there. 301-230-0980. I'll update our Twitter poll as well. If I told you that they add one of the following two names to their roster on a one-year deal for 2026, who would you choose? Brandon Ayuk or Stephon Diggs? Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right. The updated poll where we're asking Diggs or Ayuk. And you can go vote at the team at Team 980 on X, or you can just go to my account at Kevin Sheehan DC. I've retweeted it out. But Diggs with 62.5% of the vote, Brandon Ayuk with 37.5% of the vote. I would say Ayuk, but I'd be fine with Diggs. I really want, look, if they ended up signing Keenan Allen next week or in 2 weeks, I'd kind of be into that a little bit. I've always been a big fan of Keenan Allen. If they signed Juwan Jennings to a deal, I'd be into that. I need another good player at wide receiver before training camp. That's what I'd like to see them do. Now, Ayuk's upside is pretty damn high. If you really, watched him before the injury in 2024. By the way, in 2024, he wasn't off to a fast start in 2024, but he was PFF's number 2 receiver in the league in 2023, if that's important to you, with some of the advanced numbers. I think it was in 2022 when he was still, not really on everybody's radar. I remember saying, man, that dude Ayuk can play. The separation, the playmaking ability, the deep threat. If you got that guy, and that's why I would pick him, assuming that they believe they're getting that guy or they wouldn't bring him in, he's got more potential than just in 2026 than Stephon Diggs does. But Diggs is one hell of a competitor. Always has been. Let's go to Sabah. Sabah's on hold. I can't even guess as to who Sabah will pick. But go ahead. Which of the two would you choose?
Come on, Kevin. I would definitely pick Stephon Diggs. Now, I'll tell you, I'm hesitant on both of them. But, I watched a lot of New England last year with my man Drake May there
Right.
and Hollins, my other Carolina guy. And I was so shocked by pleasantly shocked by Stephon Diggs. They do a lot of that behind the scenes stuff, and he was always going to the coaches, not saying, throw me the ball, saying, what can I do? Are we okay? Is everything good? Or anytime, like one of the other receivers, with New England, it was a different receiver each game that led the team in receiving. It was always, it wasn't the same guy every time. It was Booty, or it could be Stephon, or it could be Douglas, or whoever they had, the tight end guy. But anyway, he would always go there, and you would see him like high five and, hey, good job. He would go to Drake May as a young quarterback, have a tough series or something like, hey, head up, let's go. We got you. We got your back. Like, I thought he was a very good verbal leader and also talented. Didn't really do much in the playoffs, but none of the Patriots really did. So I think if I had to choose, I definitely would do Diggs. And he played last year. Ayuk did you play, if I recall. So
oh no,
I would definitely do Diggs
he didn't
over Ayuk.
go near the field. Yeah. He didn't go near the facility last year. Yeah, he hasn't played since the early portion of 2024. Like.
Yeah. Also, I don't want Ayuk coming because he's Jaden's, I guess, former teammate. Well, he might expect more from Jaden, and or Jaden may like them two, and then the
feel
others.
the pressure.
I like it to be where
talked about that. That's not a terrible take. It's not a terrible take. There is this idea that if Ayuk came here, their relationship, he might feel compelled to feed him the ball a little bit more, or there might be more expectation from Ayuk to get more balls because he's got to get paid the following year. This would be a big year for Ayuk. So some of that could be in play for sure. But if Ayuk is physically right and mentally right, there is massive upside with Brandon Ayuk.
Well, if I was 6'6" and I'd be in the WNBA. So I mean, you can if and all you want, but I don't think Ayuk is physically or mentally right.
Yeah, but you're not 6'6", and he's been 6'6" before, not literally, but figuratively. He's actually done it before.
Yeah, but he's not mentally right.
And so it's not that much of a reach to say that maybe he can do it again at 28 years old. Thanks, Sabah.
Well,
appreciate it. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, Ayuk or Diggs if you had to choose one.
L to the W, big guy. What's going on, man?
What's up?
Hey, this is easy, man. This is easy. Jalen Brunson. Let's go, Nick.
They're gonna have a tougher game,
man. Oh, most definitely be a tougher game, though. We're still gonna pull it out, though, man. Pause. I'm going with Ayuk. Y'all keep calling this guy crazy. Well, you know, one thing I know and learned in my lifetime, there's nothing or nobody more dangerous than a crazy person that's motivated to prove a point. You know what I mean? So give me Ayuk, man. I mean, I think he has at the point of his career, and I know he's been out for 2 years. I know this, and with Diggs, I think it's a different type of skill set. And really, like you said, Diggs hasn't played. Well, he played with Thielen or whatever. But I mean, I'm with you. We splitting hairs at this point with the two. I wouldn't mind either one. But Ayuk knows how to play the number 2 role. We wouldn't be bringing him in here to save the receiving corps. He just will be a piece, a pawn on a board. So it's not like we asking him to be a savior. He has the relationship, and I don't think he's crazy. Everybody says he might be a little off or whatever, but I think he's more calculated than anything. I mean, you got to look. He didn't want to be with the 49ers, right? That was his out. Get the money back. That was his out. So that was his way to get some leverage. Now, you want to say it was to the extreme? Maybe, but I'm not going to just say the man is, mentally mentally crazy like
well,
that, man. I don't know.
That's what they just have to make sure that he's not. I would suggest that you're probably right, that the odds favor that he's not certifiable. But his judgment hasn't been great. His maturity hasn't been great. And this is a team and an organization that wants mature guys on their team and in their locker room. So they've got to feel like they can get the best at him. But to your first point, I agree with it. I mean, this guy should be highly motivated to not only perform at a high level because he hasn't done it in a while, but to perform at a high level so that he can get paid again in 2027. This guy was a legit elite, ascending to elite level wide receiver at the end of the 23 season. And back to, Billy and Chantilly, he had a great playoff, a couple of really good playoff games, including that Detroit crazy 34-31 NFC championship game. He had a good game against the Lions. I mean, Purdy didn't have the best game until the second half, if you recall. But he's a good player.
2 years. He spent 2 years trying to get to Washington. When he gets here, a culture killer team, that's not going to be the case, man. He's going to be motivated to be at his best. And like I said,
Hope you're right. And that's honestly, that's the best case right now for all of the possibilities. The best case, which is why I chose Ayuk and why you chose Ayuk, is that you get a motivated, matured, player that's healthy physically, healthy mentally, and that the San Francisco situation was an aberration for him in his life. By the way, no one accused him of being anything other than a first-rate teammate in 21, 22, and 23. And so
you look at it like this also. Sheehan. Even if it does take him to week 7 or week 8 to really get into form, like I said, we're not bringing him in to be the savior. We just want him to be a key cog to the machine.
Yeah.
So even if it does take him week 8, week 9 to really take off, it's a good
if
thing.
the taking off is at the level we saw the last time he was healthy and played, then I want that taking off even more than Diggs's. I got to run. We're up against a hard break. If you're on hold, we'll do a few more of these calls on the other side. Diggs or Ayuk, if you had to choose one, and you do for the purposes of this call, but it's on a 1-year deal, so you're not risking anything long-term. By the way, Diggs, you don't have to trade for. He's an unrestricted free agent, and we certainly think that Brandon Ayuk will be released by the 49ers at some point. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Stephon Diggs or Brandon Ayuk, that's the choice. Most of you going Diggs, although we've had a late run of Ayuk. Although our Team 980 poll at this point does show right now 58.7% of the votes with Stephon Diggs, 41.3% with Brandon Ayuk. We'll do this for just a few more calls. Clinton has been on hold for a while. Clinton, go ahead. If you had to choose one, Brandon Ayuk or Stephon Diggs, who are you choosing?
Hey, Kevin, man, look, this is no contest, man. Based on your criteria for the question, it's Stephon Diggs all day, man.
Okay, why?
Question marks with Ayuk, man, they're just too many. Question marks too many. We don't know when we're going to get him. First of all, probably we're going to get him until September. He's not going to be ready to play. I mean, it's a no contest, man. Diggs is a dog. He always been a dog. You know what you're going to get from a playing standpoint. He's going to produce. He might be a diva, but he's going to produce. Always has at every level. So no contest for me. Stephon Diggs all the way.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Clinton. And then is it Williams? Williams, go ahead.
Yeah, I would say Brandon Ayuk, simply because he's younger and he has more potential. Well, that's basically about it, you know.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that. Look, they're going to add something. I mean, the odds favor them adding to the wide receiver room between now and the beginning of camp. So it's going to be somebody, I think. It's possible that they don't. And if they don't, they still have a chance to be a good offensive football team because they were 2 years ago. And the key is obviously having the starting quarterback on the field, because without the starting quarterback on the field for the majority of the season last year, they didn't have a chance to be a good offense or even a good football team, for that matter. But I do think they will add somebody. I do think that Diggs, with his not guilty verdicts yesterday, becomes a guy that will end up playing next season somewhere on a one-year deal, more likely than not, because he played well last year. And if you added Diggs to this current room, I would be excited to see him on the field next year with Jaden Daniels opposite Terry McLaurin. As I pointed out, one of the things about Diggs is he's never had, a legit other guy. Thielen in Minnesota is really that's the list. Am I forgetting anybody, Anthony? In terms of the receivers he's played with during the course of his career, who has he had on the other side that's been truly dynamic like Terry? I don't think he has. Thielen would be the best example. And Thielen was a good receiver, a good number 2 receiver, several years ago when he was in Minnesota. I mean, they put up some prolific numbers with Kirk at the helm. They went to the playoffs. They won a playoff game, in New Orleans in overtime. And Diggs and Thielen were big on that team. But I don't think he's ever had anybody like Terry.
Nah, I mean,
am I missing somebody?
Gabe Davis, if you want to count that year or 2 years that he
had. I don't
had.
think I am.
But that's it.
Anyway, yeah, I'm just looking at the receivers back then. Thielen would be the guy. Thielen would be the guy that he had opposite of him that was pretty good. So I wanted to switch subjects here for a moment because Aaron Rodgers has not yet committed to the Pittsburgh Steelers for the upcoming 2026 season. Aaron Rodgers hasn't committed to playing football yet. He's doing the same thing he did last year. He's leaving everybody hanging. This year's different, though, because there is some reporting that there may be some interest, mutual interest, between Aaron Rodgers and the Arizona Cardinals. How about this as a possibility? Kendrick Bourne did recently sign as a receiver in Arizona. He's recruiting Rodgers to Arizona, and some people believe that it's not coincidental. We are waiting on you, Bourne wrote. That raised the level of suspicion as to why somebody on the Cardinals was pushing for Aaron Rodgers. Just after Bourne sent out that tweet, new Cardinals head coach Mike LaFleur was on the Jim Rome show, and he said, honestly, right now we're focused on the guys that we've got coming in. We've got the unit that we have, and they have, by the way, Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett, Keaton Slovis, and then they drafted Carson Beck, remember, in the 3rd round. He said, we've got a room that we're excited to work with, and that's currently where my sole focus is. On one hand, LaFleur says we're okay. On the other hand, LaFleur doesn't rule out the possibility. Aaron Rodgers to Arizona? Doesn't he have a better shot in Pittsburgh? That division right now, the NFC West, is brutal. I mean, you've got, I think, arguably the 2 best teams on paper in football in that division, in Seattle and the Rams. You've got the 49ers that may come back as a healthy and very dangerous football team. You do have Jeremiah Love. You do have Marvin Harrison. You do have, I think, one of the top 2 or 3 tight ends in the league in Trey McBride. And I don't know that a lot of football fans know how good Trey McBride is because he's played on bad teams. You know, they've got some weapons. The O-line's not there yet. Defensively, they've got some players. But, you know, a lot of people criticized Arizona for taking Jeremiah Love at number 3 overall because they don't have the roster that's ready to win. So why would you add a running back? It'll be interesting to see if Love ends up having a Ashton Genty kind of rookie season. But I would imagine that Aaron Rodgers ends up in Pittsburgh. That division is more gettable. Going to the playoffs is more gettable in the AFC North than it is the NFC West. I think it is. That team, you know, added in the backfield Rico Dowdle to Jalen Warren, who played really well. They added Michael Pittman Jr. I think as effective as Alec Pierce. I mean, Pittman Jr. was the card free agent-wise to Alec Pierce staying in Indy, but Pittman Jr. is a really good ad to go with DK Metcalf. Freiermuth was a big player for them. Darnell Washington was huge until he got hurt late in the season, that monster 6'7" tight end. And, you know, defensively, we'll see. I mean, they're getting a little bit older with Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and, you know, Alex Highsmith, et cetera. But still think that team could be a good team, and he's reunited with Mike McCarthy, his coach in Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers is going back to Pittsburgh. I don't think that Arizona makes a lot of sense for him. But it's interesting that they may be interested potentially, and he's not, you know, tied to Pittsburgh. He's an unrestricted free agent. He's not under contract with anybody right now. He could go play for anybody this year that wants him. You know, last year, clearly, Minnesota was his first choice, and Kevin O'Connell's first choice was Aaron Rodgers. Didn't work out very well. The general manager in Minnesota is gone, but they went out, you know, obviously early in free agency, didn't wait and signed Kyler Murray. They also signed Carson Wentz to go with J.J. McCarthy. The Minnesota quarterback situation will be an interesting one to watch. I would imagine Kyler Murray is penciled in as number 1. I just don't know what you can do with Kyler Murray. I guess if anybody can figure it out, somebody like Kevin O'Connell can figure it out. And being in this style of offense may be great. He had some good years with Cliff, no doubt. But, you know, kind of ran out of gas in a couple of those years. The year that they went 11-5 and went, or 11-6 and went to the postseason and got absolutely hammered by the Rams on the road in the wild card round. I mean, Kyler Murray was a mess at that point. Yeah, I think Rodgers heads back to Pittsburgh, and I think Pittsburgh, they won the division last year. I think they'd be in the hunt with Cincinnati and Baltimore to win the division again if Rodgers plays at the level he played at last year. There's been some sad news in the world of sports, in the world of communications, a passing of somebody certainly of an older age, but I'll talk about that when we come back. And then we will get back to our football team with this question. Of all of the returning players Who's got the most to prove in 2026? Think about that. Phone lines will open up shortly, 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, theteam980.com. Don't forget, you can watch this show on the Team 980's YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. One of the great media moguls of all time, Ted Turner, passed away at the age of 87 years old. He's been battling dementia for many years now. But what a life Ted Turner lived. And as it relates to sports, because I think most of you know that he founded and created CNN in 1980, the first 24/7 news network. Believe it or not, prior to 1980, they didn't exist, but they existed on cable starting in 1980. But from a sports standpoint, after launching some TV stations and launching WTBS, yes, that TBS, and then eventually TNT, Turner Sports, named after Ted Turner, his creation. In 1976, he purchased the Atlanta Braves. They were a downtrodden franchise, and he put them on WTBS or TBS, which was considered to be a superstation because it was a part of everybody's basic cable in the 1970s and through the 80s. And it helped, just as the Cubs were also became a national phenomenon because their games were also on a superstation, WGN TV, part of basic cable throughout the country. So Chicago had a station and Atlanta had a station that were considered superstations, made part of basic cable outlets and offerings. So even if you lived in DC and you got cable for the first time in 1979 or 1980 or 81, part of your basic cable platform was TBS, where you would have Atlanta Braves games on TV, and WGN, where you had Cubs games. Cubs games were all played in the afternoon at Wrigley Field, their home games. So the status of both of those franchises rose because their games were accessible to the nation. The Atlanta Braves became a popular team and became a household name even before they started to win in the 90s and in the 2000s. Brilliant for him to buy that baseball team and put it on a national platform. He truly was such a pioneer and such a serial entrepreneur, always looking for that next business. And eventually with, TNT and TBS and CNN and the Turner Broadcasting footprint from a media standpoint, Turner eventually in 96 sold the business to Time Warner for, at the time, $7.3 billion in stock. He was promised kind of a continued role, and there was a lot of bitterness afterwards because CNN eventually pushed him out. But he owned the Hawks, he owned the Braves, and he would eventually become the owner of the Atlanta NHL team, the Thrashers, who relocated back in 2011 to Winnipeg. To become the Winnipeg Jets, but creator of the Goodwill Games in '86, and just, an incredible human being, an incredible salesman. He was also an accomplished yachtsman. For those of us of a certain age, we remember him skippering, yachts in the America's Cup back in the 70s into the 80s, I think. He was quite the entrepreneur, of course, married 3 times, most famously to Jane Fonda in the 1990s. Ted Turner, dead at the age of 87 years old, but apparently this was expected for a while. All right, back to the football team. Anthony came up with this question in our pre-show meeting very early this morning. He said, what about the pressure on returning players? Who's got the most? Who's got the most to prove in 2026 of the returning players? We've spent a lot of time talking about the drafted players and the free agent players over the last few months. So what about the returning players, the players who were on the roster last year? Who's got the most to prove? So I've got I've got a short list here. I want your number one at 301-230-0980 of the returning players, the players that were on this team last year. Who has the most to prove in 2026? I wrote down, and of course, I'm going to get accused of being a hater. I'm going to get accused of, here he goes again on this particular player. But I wrote down the first player I thought of was Terry McLaurin. Terry got hurt last year after a long, protracted contract negotiation, which I actually think he is, at the very least, he and his agent are equally culpable for the length of time that it took. A big part of why Washington didn't want to pay him elite wide receiver money is that their analytics department says paying receivers elite wide receiver money after the age of 30 or into the early 30s is very risky because the, odds increase of injuries and, by the way, of diminishing productivity. Well, what happened to Terry in his age, 30 season last year? He turned 30 on September 15th. So for 16 of the 17 games played, even though he only played in 10 of them because of injury last year, he was 30 years old. Well, he got injured and he wasn't as productive. Now, the production part when he was there isn't his fault because actually he had some good games when he was there. He and Jaden played, 2 games together the entire season. So that's a big difference from 2024 when he had by far and away the best year of his career, not receptions-wise, not even yards-wise, but touchdown-wise. He had 13 touchdowns. He had never had more than 7, and those came in his rookie year. Remember, Terry's overall numbers are not prolific. He's not been a prolific receiver. He's been a consistently really good receiver, with, that stretch of seasons of 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons. But we're not talking about 105 catch seasons for 1,500 yards. The most receptions he's ever had in a season was year 2 in 2020 when he had 87 catches for 1,118 yards. The most yards was 1,191 in 2022 in 5 touchdowns. He's not, in terms of the productivity, he's not at an elite level. He's at a very good level. And so for me, given what I know they wanted contractually last year and what he thought he was worth and the status that he and his agent put him at during those contract negotiations, after a year in which A, he got hurt and only played in 10 games, B, he ended up having 38 receptions this last year. By the way, his average yards per reception was the best in 3 years for him and was the 3rd best of his career at 15.3. He had some good games last year. He had that, was it the Denver game with Marcus Mariota where he had a big game? Going through his game log here. Yeah, now he was targeted 14 times in that game, the most targets by far for him. He had 7 catches for 96 yards and a touchdown in that game. That was the game in which Burks had that insane one-handed grab. But, his last 5 games, you're talking about, basically, not being targeted a lot, not a lot of catches, but some production. Terry was fine last year when he played, but I think he's got a lot to prove because the team thought there was risk in giving him a massive deal, which they decided not to give him because of his age. And he said, remember, I'm a young 30 years old because I didn't play a lot before getting to the NFL. I don't have as much wear and tear. I think Terry's got a lot to prove in 2026. By the way, let me just take it a step further. If Jaden plays 17 games, Terry's going to prove something next year. He's going to prove that he is still a viable receiver because here's the thing about him. After a season like last year, this guy's going to be in the best shape of his career. Hopefully he'll be happier, a year removed from some of the, confrontational, tone that negotiation took on over a long period of time over the summer. I think he'll have a big year, contingent on the quarterback being healthy for 17. But I think he's got a lot to prove. Now, the other names that I wrote down are Deron Payne and Mikey Sanderstill. I didn't write Jaden down because I don't know what you'd want him to prove. Like, unless he's got to prove he can be healthy for 17 games. It's not necessarily what we're asking, but it's okay to turn it in that direction. If you think Jaden's got to prove that last year was an aberration in terms of his health, okay, that's fair. It was an aberration so far. If it happens again, it's a trend. But last year was an aberration. He had never had a season in college or in the 1 year he had played in the NFL prior to last season where he missed that many games. He missed 2 college games, and he didn't miss 1 pro game in his rookie year, and they played 20 of them in his rookie year because they had 3 playoff games after a 17-game regular season. So for me, Terry's got a lot to prove among the returning players, and I would say Deron Payne and Mikey Sanderstill have a lot to prove. I'll tell you what, man, Deron Payne better ball out this year, because if not, there's not going to be a big market for him at the end of this year. This is it for him contractually. He's playing out this year. They brought him back to play out this year. They needed him to a certain degree, and they also probably couldn't get much for him, if anything. And there's a chance if he really plays well, they could get a really solid compensatory pick in the 2027 draft. If he ends up signing a big deal in 2027 as a free agent at 29 years old. That's the thing about Deron, right? Deron's not old as a player. He's technically in the back half of what should be his prime years. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Who's the returning player that has the most to prove? Anthony, who's your answer?
I'm going with Mikey Sanderstill. And
yeah, that's not a bad one.
Yeah. Part of the reason I'm going with Mikey is he had a promising rookie season. And then last season, he just looked like a complete shell of himself. And then also, when you start to think about what Adam Peters did in the draft, that 2024 draft class has not lived up to, any expectations we've, set out for them outside of Jaden. Johnny, he hasn't done much. Ben Sinnott hasn't done much. And then our later round picks either. So I think Mikey coming off a promising rookie season and then having a down year last year, I think he's the one that we can at least salvage from that draft class if there is going to be someone that we can say, all right, we got to hit on this guy. And we also got to keep in mind, we traded back and allow, the Eagles to go out there and get Cooper DeJean and all these other players draft ahead of him. So I think if he can go out there and just have another good season, I think that's what will make me most happy.
Yeah, I'm not ready to bury the 2024 draft quite yet. And the bottom line is the 2024 draft produced a quarterback. So we'll always have that. But I think Sanders still has a chance to be a good player still. I think Brandon Coleman still has a chance to be a good player. And we'll see about Newton, and we'll see about guys like McCaffrey and McGee, and even Ben Sinnott. I mean, Ben Sinnott may be moving into a role that's actually more suited for him, because remember what Adam Peters said about Ben Sinnott when he drafted him. He compared him to Kyle Juszczyk, a fullback. So now you'll have an offense that might have an H-back, might have a fullback in it. Maybe Sinnott is more built for that kind of a role. So we'll see. But Sanders still is a good one because it was a tough year for him. And it's not just because the defense was in disarray. Part of it is they were in disarray, injury-wise and otherwise, seemed to be very disorganized. But he got picked on. There's no doubt they went after him. Other teams did last year. It was the opposite of his rookie season. So I think that's a decent one. I do. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Of the returning players, who's got the most to prove? Let's go with our guy, Kevin. Kevin, go ahead.
Thanks, Kev, for taking my call. And just
Kev,
to
you
step
there?
back for a second. Yeah, can you hear me?
No, Kev?
I
can't hear him if he's talking, Anthony. Let's go to Mike in Upper
Can you hear
Marlboro.
me?
I got Kevin now. Okay, go ahead, Kev.
I'm sorry, Kevin.
That's
I
all right.
was just going to say, if I were to, he asked what position group, it's the one we've been talking about all morning, which is wide receiver. And I just want to say something real quick about that. Everybody talking about Williams just being a slot and not necessarily agreeing with Peters and the team's assessment. I don't know. I watch those highlights of Williams. I see a lot of Gary Clark, and he wasn't just a slot receiver. So we'll see about that. But
yeah,
anyway,
I think our fans know that there's a possibility he's not just an inside player. I think they have some versatility actually with him and Terry, both. I agree with that.
Yeah, no, I like the player. It's really grown on me as a pick. Obviously, I was biased, and then the next round, the Ravens got Surratt, and we'll see how they both do. But when I see more and more about Williams, I see a lot of Clark, and that's what we need him to be because let's face it, as you've mentioned already about Terry and his contract, et cetera, and maybe this is what they think. Maybe they feel like Williams has the potential to quickly become a number one. I really don't know. We'll have to see. But for me, if it's one player, Kevin, it's got to be Allegretti. Because you know what? They used to think Biotish was the guy. They liked Biotish until they didn't. And they've liked Allegretti, although our film guy, Steve, ain't so crazy about Allegretti, and neither am I. Okay? I great guy. Smart guy. Hope he proves me wrong. But I think we're weak on the inside there at left guard potentially if it's not Coleman, and at center, and in terms of pass rush coming inside. And I think it's problematic. So to me, our center position, and it's Allegretti because he's gotten a lot of confidence, a lot of props from this team.
Yeah,
we'll have to see.
It's not a bad one. I thought about it. The only thing that I thought about is, look, he didn't put himself into that position. They believe in him. He's got something to prove to them. There already seems to be a bias that from the fan base that this was, way down the list. And as I shared with you guys last week, the thing that changed my mind on this position, and I'm not saying that that they don't have to prove that they're right, but I know for a fact that they're not as concerned out there as maybe we thought they would be. He's apparently a very good communicator, very smart. The locker room likes him. The offensive line really likes him. The offensive coaches like him. They feel confident in him. Not to the point where they wouldn't have added a really good player in Tyler Linderbaum had the price been right. But I get where you're coming from. To me, I was thinking more about the player last year who didn't live up to something and has a chance to come back and redeem himself. But I get where you're coming from. Thanks, Kev.
Hey, Kev,
Yep. Did you cut him off?
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, Kev. Next time. TC, go ahead. Who's got the most to prove of the returning players next year?
I believe it's Jaden, hands down. Jaden, because of the injury issue. Plus, you looking back here, the games that he did play, he wasn't good. He was missing.
Disagree.
A lot of games played. Well, okay, you disagree. I'm just giving it to you like
He was outstanding in the Chargers game. He's pretty damn good in the Chicago game. The fumble killed him at the end in the rain.
Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin, you over the top with Jaden. I know that. I like Jaden too. And
No. I'm just objectively. He started and finished 4 football games.
Keep it real.
He was not good in the Green Bay game. He was not good in the Green Bay game.
First game. He wasn't good in the Giants game.
He wasn't bad in the Giants game. It's the opening game of the year. They won 21-6. He was 19 of 30 for 233, a touchdown, no picks. Rushed for 68 yards. How can you say he was bad in that game?
I did
not good.
Say he was bad. I said he was not good.
He was
compared to the year before. He was not good in the games he played.
But compared to the season opener the year before, he was excellent.
Let me finish. let me finish. You never give me time.
I don't want to let you finish because I want to defend my guy, but go ahead.
Okay, it's not your guy. It's my guy too. But you over the top for him. You don't have to give him any. You don't say when someone's doing something that's not right. You don't look at that. You just go right past.
That's not true.
Okay, but anyway,
that's total unfair criticism. But continue.
Okay, let me finish. Let me just finish on this. Okay, not only that, you have Drake May who performed well this year. You had Caleb in Chicago who performed. These is his peers that performed well this year. So yes, he has it. But then he talking about the contract, and you got to establish about being healthy for 17 games. So yes, he has the most. It's not Payne or Terry, because Terry, you said he ain't gonna be here the following year anyway. Payne ain't gonna be here the following year. So those cats say,
well, Terry could be. Terry could be. He's got a chance.
He could be
to be here.
Could be.
Look,
maybe
the case you're making for Jaden having the most to prove is a good case. I don't disagree with it at all. I disagree with when people say, well, the games he did play in, he didn't play well in. That's just not objectively true. He played very well in the Chargers game. He played very well until the fumble in the rain, admittedly a terrible fumble, but he played very well in the Chicago game. And he played decent football in the opener against the Giants. The game that he didn't play well was the Green Bay game.
Kevin, what we're talking about is a combined effort with how his whole year turned out versus
well, I'm just taking the games in which he played in. We can only talk about 4 games that he played start to finish in. The other 3 games he got hurt in.
Individual game. I'm just talking about the games he played overall. He was a little off last year, and if you don't see that,
a little off is different from saying that he was not good. So a little off in the Giant game, definitely a lot off in the Green Bay game, but that's different from saying not good. But I don't want to get it confused with. And I don't want it to derail from your larger point, which is a good point, and I don't disagree with it, that he's got a lot to prove, certainly from a national perception standpoint, because Drake May had a near MVP season. Caleb Williams had an unbelievable season. Bo Nix had a really good season. And he was basically sidelined for much of the season and couldn't do what he did in his rookie season. So it's kind of an out of sight, out of mind situation. And so he's got to bring himself back into everybody's consciousness. I understand that. I think that's fair.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, TC. Appreciate it. Bobby, Rodney, Andrew, everybody else on hold, stay there. We'll finish up with the player that has the most to prove, but the player is of the returning players who's got the most to prove in 2026. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. All right. Of the returning players, give me the player that's got the most to prove. I gave two names. I gave Terry and I gave Deron Payne. Anthony gave Mike Sanderstill, and I think that's a good one. A couple of you have given Jaden so far. And I do understand from the national perception after last year, especially the quarterbacks that he got drafted with in 2024 and how well they played, there is something for him to prove, no doubt. There's something, that he's got to go out and he's got to show that 2024 wasn't the aberration. Last year's injuries were the aberration. So I get that. It's not a bad answer at all. Bobby in North Carolina, who do you have? The player that has the most to prove of the returning players.
Kevin, we were it's 5. Your national perspective is he's injury prone, and he posted 4 games and finished 4 games. So I mean, he's just got to play. You know what I'm saying? And
yep.
I thought he could have played this year, Kevin. I'm still a little bit confused on why they shut him down so early. We had 5 or 6 games left. They shut him down. He could have played. So
I agree.
That was an organizational decision. But I do have a new one. I blew into that class. Frankie was really good in 24, and I just think last year just had a.
I like that one. I thought about him briefly. Yeah, I think Luvu was an All-Pro in 2024, and I think there's a chance that this defense, especially with the additions, Frankie Luvu could end up being quite the player this year.
I agree, but you agree with me. Last year he wasn't as good as he was in 24, though, Kevin. Correct?
Yeah, but it's also when they lost guys like Wise and Armstrong up front, and Duran wasn't consistent. They were getting too quickly to those second levels. It was tough pretty much all season long for every level of the defense, not to mention behind them, the miscommunications in the secondary. I haven't lost faith in Frankie Luvu. I actually am, I was considering the possibility that they would consider extending him in the offseason. They have not done that. But big spot for him, and with Chenal and Styles and, Owe and Chason, it's going to be big for Duran and Kinlaw and Settle and company to be really good in front of him. But I think Frankie's got a chance to have a big bounce back year. And, for him to get a next contract, he needs one.
Exactly. He's the same way Duran is. They both got to ball out this year to get paid again. But going back to Jayden real quick, Kevin, he's going to play with a chip on his shoulders. I know that. We know what kind of player he is. And I know deep down he wants to prove all these naysayers, because you said it earlier. He was out of sight and out of mind. And those other quarterbacks took a step forward, and everybody thinks he took a step back. But I got all the confidence in 5. He'll come back as long as we can keep him upright. He's a baller. We all know that. And I'm excited to see him play this year coming up.
Thanks, Bobby. Appreciate it. Let's go to Rodney in D.C. Rodney, of the returning players, who's got the most to prove?
Hey, Kev, for all the reasons you said about Terry, the injury, the contract, the position he was taking, and he got hurt. But I think the type of person he is, he wants to prove that he's worthy of being paid the money. That's number one. I think he'll be fine, especially if JD is healthy for 17 games. Luvu, to me, like the other caller said, with the last year's coaching, I don't know, it probably was a little bit of both, coaching and the players not in the right position for whatever reason. I think they flipped the roster on the defense. And again, the Terry and Luvu, I think their character is what's going to help them rebound and prove everybody that they are who we think they are. So those are my two. My honorable mention, Deron Payne. Yeah.
No, I think that there is something to prove for the players you mentioned, but the two players specifically, Terry and Luvu, I expect them to be at their best. And hopefully the scheme and everything around them, like Terry obviously needs Jaden to be healthy for 17 games. Luvu needs Payne and Kinlaw and Settle and Johnny Newton to be good in front of them. But I like bounce back years for both of those players. Thanks, Rodney. We'll finish it up. with Andrew in Sterling, Virginia. Andrew, who's your guy in terms of the most to prove of the returning players?
So, Kevin, I've got a under the radar guy. I've got Jordan McGee. We've heard a lot of great things about Jordan, and he's got a couple guys coming in this year, Leo Chenal, obviously, and Sonny Styles,
right,
where he's really going to have to, in his third year, ball out to stand out and have a chance to get on the field. So I'm excited to see him add to the linebacking core we have, but I think this is a year where the competition hopefully brings out the best in him and has an opportunity to get on the field and show us what he's got.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that they have really liked the player, but at the same time, they went out and added players that play his position to a certain degree. So they must have not been totally confident that he was ready to step in to that role. Thanks. Appreciate the call. Thanks to all of you who called the show today. Thanks to Anthony and Brian involved in producing the show. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.